I know, way late. Having the new variant of COVID was way easier than the first time, but still knocked me down for longer than I would have liked. But here I am, finally ready to answer questions asked by $3 supporters for May of 2022. You can ask questions for June at the link below. Let's start on Subscribestar, where Huge Sinker asks, is quantum computing a threat to cryptocurrencies? Short answer, no. Longer answer, maybe. Cryptocurrencies are based on cryptographic hashes. The main threat to encryption that quantum computers represent is from Shor's algorithm, which can't be used to attack hashing algorithms. But they can be attacked using Grover's algorithm, which basically cuts the key length in half. So the standard 256-bit hash now has the strength of a 128-bit hash. That's still pretty darn secure, but if people do project a problem, they can just upgrade to a 512-bit hash. If there's a threat to anything, it's the signing algorithms, most of which are attackable by Shor's algorithm. But that's only the case on new transactions. If this becomes a threat, just upgrade the algorithm and put a chain lock to make sure the previous entries up to that point can't be changed. So if it does become a problem, it's easily solved by active developers. But it may not even be a problem. There's a fundamental problem with quantum computers in that qubits can be destroyed by thermal or EM noise. No matter how well you shield it, it's bound to happen. So you have to put every single qubit into superposition and then read it before even a single qubit can be destroyed. That gets progressively more difficult the more qubits you have. Some experts don't think we'll be able to get anywhere near 256 qubits for that reason. There's just no way in this universe to have them in superposition long enough to be read without at least one qubit being destroyed. Rainbow Asteroids asks, if DRM doesn't do anything for the end consumer, and it does a shit job at preventing piracy, then why does nearly every company under the sun put some form of DRM protection on their content? Because they're stupid? Sadly, the real answer is probably a lot more sinister. They know DRM doesn't work. They have to know. But it's a legal bludgeon. The DMCA and comparable laws in other countries make it so it's illegal to bypass DRM for any purpose, even fair use. They can completely destroy all legal protections you otherwise would have had. They know it won't work. They know it won't stop piracy, but they can use it against critics or documentarians or anyone else using their content for review or criticism purposes or to make an otherwise legal derivative work. It's because they have power over you and their would-be competition, and they're gonna exercise it. Okay, long one from Thomas Urbanski about a video he's watching. He's talking about how recession makes unfit bad companies go bankrupt, like ones based on outdated procedures, overhyped ideas, dumb money investors, relying more on their position in the market than finding out how consumer actually wants, and so on. That leaves more space in the market for the companies that are better aligned with the more foundational economic rules, like focused on actual current consumer needs and efficiency in how they operate. It doesn't mean the better companies suddenly grow and instantaneously fill the gap, but as the market grows back, the proportion of good and bad companies is much different than before recession. This reminds me that the most prominent biological evolutionary changes are related not to massive growth, but to massive dying. So the mutation has to already be in the population, but until there's a sudden change in environment, it's not beneficial enough to become the norm. Random case, peppered moths. My question is, do you have any analogies between economics and evolution, or any other science field, that you find interesting? Good and bad as in how efficient they are with how they operate. I've actually done a lot of videos on this subject. Look way back early in my channel. Here's a fun fact. Charles Darwin got a lot of his inspiration for his theory of biological evolution from reading Adam Smith. So yeah, there's a direct relationship. They both deal with bottom-up spontaneous order, completely undirected by an intelligent agent. Although it's not really about good and bad. Dark peppered moths aren't good when there's coal pollution and bad when there's not. Neither economics nor evolution makes any kind of moral judgment. There's just what works for the current situation and what doesn't. The dinosaurs were really successful for something like 150 million years, and that's just the non-avians. Add another 65 million for the avian dinosaurs, who of course are still with us today as birds. But the non-avian dinosaurs died out despite being successful for so long, because the planet's environment changed too much for them to be able to adapt. It wasn't any kind of judgment on the dinosaurs. As a clade, they've got a lot to be proud of. Same with old guard corporations. Woolworths was an incredibly successful company for a long time. So was Kodak. But neither company is what it was because they just couldn't adapt properly to the digital age. The massive dying you mention is called creative destruction by economists. The classic example is how buggy whip makers went out of business when people started driving cars. But it's not like the people themselves were out of luck and starved, they just did something else. 200 years ago, 95% of us were farmers. Now, very few of us are farmers, but the rest of us aren't starving because we found other things to do in the economy. So while businesses and industries change and go under and collapse, the people don't. And the only exceptions you can find to that are when government steps in. Venezuela is a good example. And lastly on Subscribestar, Rainbow Asteroids asks, what's your opinion of Linux companies like Red Hat and Canonical? Pretty good. I really like Red Hat as a company, even though I'm disappointed they no longer have a good desktop OS, and Canonical has done a lot of good as well. Although they've come under fire for doing a lot of Microsoft-esque stuff that invades the privacy that Linux promises its users. It was very open and easy to opt out of, but it left a bad taste in people's mouths. And it is getting kind of bloated over time. But then, of course, there's the perpetual point that, regardless of anything else about these two distros, at least they're not Arch! But seriously, on the whole, I think both companies have been a net good for Linux and open source in general. Okay, this video's getting kind of long, and there are a lot more questions over on Patreon as well, which will take even longer to cover. So if you don't mind, I'm going to leave off here for now, and we'll get to those another time. Thanks for watching, and please hit like, subscribe, and the bell, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. You'll also find the links to my Patreon and Subscribestar there, so you can become a regular supporter and get all my content early and ad-free, and you can also get other benefits like special Discord access, as well as monthly AMAs and chatouts. Thanks again, and until next time, stay strong and be free.